What's going on YouTube? It's Tej back again with another video, and today we're going to talk about the New York Jets in our season preview series, and hopefully you all enjoyed today's video. If you do, be sure to hit that like button, it'll help me out a ton. If you're new around here, want to see more sports content, more of this series, just hit that big red subscribe button. Tell me what you think about the Jets down below this season. Do you think Zach Wilson takes that leap forward after he's back from the injury? Do you think this team's a sneaky playoff contender? How many wins do you think they come away with? Who are some X factors and what are some games you're looking forward to watching this team play? Love to have your thoughts, and I respond to just about every comment, so let's talk about the Jets down below. If you're new to the series, welcome to it. Be sure to go back. Maybe your favorite team's already been talked about, maybe some division rivals, or you just want to talk more football with us. We'd love to have you engage in those conversations. We'll start with win range, projected win total, and then we'll go position group by position group, kind of give you a feel for where I stand on this roster. 4 to 8 wins, a little bit of a wider range than I like for these videos, but man, that first X factor and the guy in the picture could dictate a lot. He plays the most important position in football. We'll kind of wait for that. Right now I'm at 5-12, but I could totally see this team, being a sneaky, gritty 7-10. Maybe even if everything breaks right, 8-9. So let's start talking about this roster. Zach Wilson's, of course, the big what if, dude. And I gotta say, I was with a buddy of mine actually 2 friends of mine who were phys ed majors in college, and one was in med school, and showed him the clip when he goes down, and the guy who was in med school was like, yeah, that's an ACL, that's done. So just like everybody else in the world, we all kind of thought, yep, there goes Wilson's season and potentially his job. So it's encouraging that it's only a 2 to 4 week injury, and it's good to hear the Jets are going to take it fully cautious. Not until he's at 100% fully, until he's out on the field. So it's probably going to be Joe Flacco week 1, but that's okay. Maybe even week 2 for that point, but it's okay. It's more so about what Wilson shows you, down the stretch. And, you'd rather have 15 games at, 100% or as close as you can get after that first game he plays versus like 17 where he's at best 80% and then, progressively worse as the year goes on. So that's as big a X factor as there is in the NFL. But moving on from that, Breece Hall, really like that. Moving up, not crazy about that, but a guy who can be a workhorse back, 3-down guy, great pass catching ability, was my number 1 running back in last year's draft class. Then you have year 2, Michael Carter. I'm all about that. Really shifty, good change in direction skills. So having him be a compliment to Breece Hall, I think that's a nice 1-2 punch for the future. The offensive line, even with the Mekhi Becton injury, Dwayne Brown, George Fant, I'm feeling good about that tackle duo. And it's a 2-year deal for Dwayne Brown. So, maybe they'll have him stick around next year, and Mekhi Becton's fully on the block. You heard rumors of that this year, but then another injury. Dwayne Brown, 2-year contract. Maybe next year Becton's shopped, which is kind of an interesting note in and of itself. But also Lincoln Tomlinson, Elijah Vera Tucker, those are solid guards. Connor Williams will be solid enough at center. That offensive line has come a long way from where it was, a handful of years ago. And the wide receiver room. Garrett Wilson looks great in the preseason, top 10 pick. He's living up to that hype. Now we got to see in the regular season. Of course, it's different to do in the preseason versus the regular season, but man, the early returns have been great. Year 2 of Elijah Moore easily could have been a first-round pick. I was a little higher on Kadarius Toney than Elijah Moore, but that being said, I like them both as, first-round talents. Moore falls to the top of the second. Really nice value add there for the Jets. And then another year with Corey Davis. So Wilson, I think, can be a guy who, maybe not wins in the yak department, but smooth enough route runner to where he's certainly a factor underneath. But because of his route running ability and just good enough speed, that was one of the surprising things at Indy last year was how good of a 40 he ran, but can win at all 3 levels. Maybe not a yak guy, but can still win at all 3 levels. Corey Davis can be that possession guy who works the intermediate parts in the middle part of the field too, between the hashes. And then you have Elijah Moore, who I think could be a great field stretching slot, also dynamic with the ball in his hands after the catch. So you have a nice well-rounded group there. And then also Tyler Conklin, CJ Uzomah at the tight end spots, feeling pretty good about those ads. Then switch over to the defense. Of course, you got the defensive-minded head coach Robert Saleh, and John Franklin Myers. You need Quinn Williams to take a leap forward, but as is, still a solid football player. And then on the edge, you're talking about 26 overall pick Jermaine Johnson. They trade back into the first round and get him. And comparing that to the rumors of getting him at 4 or 10, I like 26 a whole lot more. And then also the return of Carl Lawson. Hopefully he's back to 100% and is still that player that people were trying to tap into that potential once he got out of Cincinnati. It always felt like there was more meat to the bone. You see the stats, you're like, all right, that's solid. But you watch Carl Lawson, you see a little bit more. Now it's a chance, assuming he stays healthy, to work with Robert Saleh, who's worked with some awesome edge rushers in his career. So can he get that next level and next gear out of Lawson? Pairing him up with Jermaine Johnson certainly is an encouraging sign of the future for the Jets. Linebacking room's a little questionable. C.J. Mosley, Quan Alexander, these veterans who had their injuries, had their down years, but that's such an interesting and integral spot for that Robert Saleh defense. Think about Fred Warner and the weight that he carries in the middle of that 49ers defense. That's what the Jets are still looking for. So that's going to be an impactful group. And then secondary, man. I mean, an overwhelmingly improved unit here. Jordan Whitehead comes in. Marcus Joyner was already there, but you're talking about adding a Whitehead, and you still have Ashton Davis as well. It feels like a nice 3-player rotation you work out. Maybe Ashton Davis doesn't see the field as much, but Whitehead and Joyner, I'm feeling mostly optimistic about. And then the cornerback room, you sign a DJ Reed for $10 million a year. You draft a Sauce Gardner at number 4 overall. That's the type of investment this team needed at secondary. In the draft, a lot of Jets fans want to tell me, they're not going to draft a corner. They're not going to draft a corner. I mean, I bought it. I mean, I believed it. And the reports kind of felt like they weren't, but I'm so glad they did, because now you have these two guys. And, DJ Reed could play in the nickel just because of his size, but if you're paying a guy $10 million a year, you're probably going to keep him on the outside. And that allows, whether it's, the other Michael Carter, or if it's Bryce Hall, day 3 pick out of Virginia, who has been solid, and a lot of Jets fans have been optimistic about. Maybe he's sliding inside to play the slot. So it just takes those guys who, even if you liked them, let's just be honest with ourselves, not NFL high tier starters, or really above average starters. They were liabilities starting as outside corners and as number 1 and 2 options. Now you move them into corner 3 and 4. One of them will play in the nickel. You feel so much better about that. So really like how much this roster has improved. Joe Douglas has done a tremendous job, and you can see the Robert Saleh, fingerprint and influence on it as well. So now it just needs to come together, and that will kind of come back to Zach Wilson once we get to X Factors. Realistic goal, and Reach Goal talked about Wilson as well, but they are what they sound like. Realistic goal, defense looks legit. Let's start with one side of the ball, man. Like, I just laid out all that talent on that side of the ball, and Robert Saleh is your head coach. All right, this team could be one that takes that leap forward, and from year to year, defense can be kind of variable and inconsistent, but I could see this being the year where, like, the Jets in fantasy, EPA per play, points per game, whatever metric you want to, weigh this off of, whatever matters most to you, I could see this being a team that works themselves from the top 10 or maybe even higher. Again, Saleh with all that talent, the investment at corner, Lawson back and healthy, Jermaine Johnson paired up with them, maybe Quinnen Williams becomes that superstar, that top 3 type of talent, top 3 pick type of talent. It could totally happen. And I feel like it's pretty realistic too, because even if all those things don't break out, it's a well-balanced, no weak link type of unit. And you look at kind of where the Bengals were last year with, maybe no glaring superstar outside of Jesse Bates, but also no glaring weaknesses. The Jets could at least be something like that. And then Reach Goal, Zach Wilson proves it. He's like, he looks like a number 2 overall pick. You see the big plays. It all kind of comes together. And the Jets finish over 500, which if Wilson hits, this team, you would hope finishes 9-8 at worst, right? Because Wilson, and this kind of leads us into the X Factors. We'll go ahead and start talking about that. That's the last peg. That's the last thing we do, because I'm gushing about the running backs. I love this wide receiver, at least on paper. I love the offensive line in theory. The defense should be good. Now we just got to see it. And part of it is Mike LaFleur, the offensive coordinator, second year as the OC, so hopefully there's some growth and improvement from him. It just comes down to Wilson. And, last year it felt like he was afraid to take the check down stuff. And, at BYU he was known for, extending plays, getting outside the pocket, strong arm, get the ball down the field, crazy highlight plays, big time throws. I get all that. But those things start to become more open once you take the easy stuff and you take the check downs. And you force defenses to play honest. So hopefully he's made those strides. And once we get to see him in the regular season, he is that guy who can do both. Right? And think about, Mike LaFleur's brother, Matt. Think about what that did for Aaron Rodgers to have him play within a system, take the check downs, embrace some of the RPO, the yards after the catch, the quick stuff. And then next thing you know, defense has to creep up, and then there's the bomb. There's the deep ball behind the safety's head. Whatever the case may be, however you want to word it, some of that might come to fruition too this year if Wilson really embraces that. Next up, Quan Alexander, CJ Mosley. I don't like putting 2 players here, but they just signed Quan Alexander, so it's basically whoever's that starting inside linebacker who's going to assume that Fred Warner-esque role. Quan Alexander, a lot of his struggles have not been because of talent. It's just because the dude can't, unfortunately, stay on the field, which, maybe this is the year out there for the full 17, or like out there for a majority of the year. He's out there for 12, 13, 14, and that's good enough to have the Jets defense be a legit unit. Or maybe it's CJ Mosley. I mean, don't forget like how good he was with the Ravens, made a lot of money, and has been a major disappointment in New York. Maybe this is the year. That one I'm a little less optimistic about. It basically comes down to, do you think Quan Alexander can stay healthy, or do you think CJ Mosley turns back the clock like 6 years? Both seem like low percentages, but man, if they did, if one of those two could just be at their peak, this defense could be scary good, and it kind of gives Saleh that one last missing piece he's been looking for. And then Jordan Whitehead. So he's been really, really good in Tampa Bay, and, I don't mean to put, most of the time these X Factors, I don't put superstars or even like above average players in here because I think they truly should be wild cards. Maybe that's what I'll title it next year, the wild card, group. But man, Jordan Whitehead's been really good in Tampa Bay. But was that because of Tampa? Because he was playing, in that 3 safety rotation. So, Todd Bowles can kind of mix and match, hide his potential weaknesses. It certainly helps playing alongside, an Antoine Winfield Jr., who's emerged as one of the best, talents at that position in the NFL. So there's a lot of things that make you look at Whitehead and be like, maybe that's why. Maybe that helped. Okay. And if you take him away from that environment and those surrounding pieces, does that ding his performance? Kind of think back to like John Johnson III. You signed that deal with the Browns leaving the Rams, 13 a pop, and it was like, man, that feels like such a great value signing. And then John Johnson III has one of the weakest years of his career. If you're the Jets, that's the last thing you want to see with Jordan Whitehead. So I'm kind of pulling a situation and trying to extrapolate what might happen this year and who could make sense to be the candidate there. Maybe it's Jordan Whitehead. So if he's able to avoid that, it's just kind of continuing on. The Jets have had, Jamal Adams, then it was him and Marcus May, then it was just Marcus May. If you add Jordan Whitehead, you still have that like legit above average type of talent back, overlooking and seeing the entire field at safety spots. So leaving X Factors, let's talk games to watch. No division games in here. I don't do that as a part of this series. Those are just kind of games to watch to me. Week 2 at the Cleveland Browns. So this is, no Deshaun Watson, of course. And, Jacoby Brissett. This might be the season debut for Zach Wilson. Look at these two teams on paper, and excluding the quarterback position, I still like the Browns a little bit more because the Jets don't have a Myles Garrett. I like the secondary a little bit more in Cleveland, and the Jets don't have an Amari Cooper right now, but Garrett Wilson could totally become that type of guy. In the offensive line, I'd still probably give the edge to Cleveland, but that one's close. So all in all, I'd say the Browns are a little bit better in the games in Cleveland. But, man, year 2, Zach Wilson, this could be the first time we see it. And, man, what type of a showing, what type of rhetoric would build if Zach Wilson returns from injury and just balls out against the Browns and the Jets steal that game? Which is also interesting because look at the Browns' schedule. They could be sneaky candidates to start the year 0-2, and then it's like, okay, where's Jimmy Garoppolo, right? Like, it'd be interesting to see if the Browns really struggle in the first, 2, 3, 4 weeks of the year, how desperate things get before Deshaun Watson gets back. Especially now it's, not an entire year suspension, it counts against his contract. So next year, he starts making that fully guaranteed $45+ million cap hit. So things are going to get really interesting. This year, it's a much smaller figure. So it's a really interesting window there for Cleveland. So it's important for them, but also this could be one of those first games where you look at with the Jets and it's like, hey, yeah, the Browns didn't have Deshaun Watson, but they still went into Cleveland against probably a slightly better roster all in all outside of the quarterback position. Got the job done. All right, the Jets might be sneaky this year. Fast forward quite a bit, week 12 against the Chicago Bears. I think the Jets are better than the Bears. I'm pretty low in Chicago this year. And you look at the rebuild, the Jets are obviously further along, and that's why they've been able to accumulate talent like a Breece Hall, Jermaine Johnson, Garrett Wilson, and even before that, free agent acquisitions like a Carl Lawson this year, Jordan Whitehead. So they're a little bit further along. And also you're talking about, deeper into the process with Robert Saleh and Joe Douglas versus first-year GM Ryan Poles, first-year head coach Matt Eberflus. So it's not really apples to apples, but they're two teams in the middle of a rebuild. The Jets are further along. I'd like to see them take care of business here against the Bears. And this is part of why it's a games to watch, because they're on quote-unquote equal playing field. Maybe the Jets hold the high ground here. I want the game to feel like it. I want the Jets to push the Bears around. I want them to feel like the better team, because then it's like, all right, yes, New York is not in the same depths of despair that I see Chicago in. So bit of a differentiating point. Yeah, we both might not be great, but yeah, we're not that bad, if that makes sense. So then week 15 against the line. This is such an interesting game because we'll see what happens with Zach Wilson, but if he struggles this year, you have two teams with rosters that are ready to go if they add a difference maker quarterback. And, the Lions, it feels like it's probably going to be someone in the 2023 draft. For the Jets, if Wilson doesn't hit, is it a draft pick? Are you trying to go get a veteran? What veterans are even available? Maybe the Lions want a vet. It could break 1,000 different ways, but the investment the Lions have made to the defensive line. Same thing you could say about the Jets. Trying to get better in the secondary, a little bit more of a head start there for the Jets. The Lions are lagging behind, but we'll see what happens with Okudah and Amani Oruwariye, year 2 of Ifeatu Melifonwu. A lot of things to break out there, but they, still have some pieces to work with. And then, the wide receivers, drafted Jameson Williams, drafted Garrett Wilson. So so similar in so many different ways, and the offensive lines look really intriguing and really good on paper. So it's the quarterbacks, and it's also, this is gonna be a good gauge of like, hey, Robert Saleh, should you be on a hot seat here? Or Dan Campbell, you're having a rough year too after a lot of excitement. Should you be on the hot seat? So it's interesting to compare on where those two coaches are at as well as the teams entirely. And then, of course, the quarterbacks. Like, is Jared Goff still looking like Jared Goff, which I assume, and that's going to push the Lions to go get a franchise guy in the draft or via trade. And does Zach Wilson look like the guy for the future for the Jets? And, week 15, late in the year, those are the types of games. Again, close to even playing field. Like the Jets aren't going to be as good of a team against the Bills. The Lions a little more even, so I want to see the Jets bring it. I want to get a true good look at Zach Wilson in that type of game and see, hey, could he be the guy? But those are my games to watch, and that's going to do it for my New York Jets season preview video. Tell me what you think about this squad down below in the comment section. How many wins do you think they come away with? Who are some X factors? What are some games to watch? And of course, tell me what you think about Zach Wilson. That's really the talking point with this squad. Love to have your thoughts, and I respond to just about every comment, so let's talk about the Jets down below. Hopefully you all enjoyed today's video. If you did, be sure to hit that like button. It helped me out a ton. If you're new around here and want to see more sports content, just hit that big red subscribe button. That's going to do it for me. Hope you all have a fantastic rest of your day. And until next time, my name is Tej, and I'm signing off.